All right. I gotta talk to you about something. CD Projekt Red. Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk. The feeling of being there, of walking the streets of the future, is really going to be breathtaking.
Okay, no. We're not here to hate on Cyberpunk. That's not what this is. Sure, it was the trendy thing to do years ago, but recently I've been seeing a lot of people praising CD Projekt Red for what they've done with Cyberpunk in recent months. There have been a ton of updates to the game. They released an anime which has gotten very high reviews from all demographics, and the Phantom Liberty DLC, which I knew absolutely nothing about before this. Also, according to CD Projekt Red, the 2.1 patch update was the final major patch for Cyberpunk 2077, with all development transferring to other projects, mainly Polaris, which I think is The Witcher 4. Very excited for, by the way. Witcher 3 is my favourite game of all time. But I'll save my Witcher glazing session for another video if I'm in the mood for it. Anyways, now that development for Cyberpunk 2077 is complete, I decided to revisit it after not touching it for, let's say, 4 years. Now, I didn't want to just go in and race through the game and give my basic review. I really wanted to get familiar with the genre because although the game was an absolute mess at launch, I still thoroughly enjoyed it, bugs and crashes aside, so before starting I wanted to understand the origins of Cyberpunk.
Hey everyone, feels great to have you back. So then, did you all hear about that Arasaka aircraft carrier docked in Night City?
Well, what is Cyberpunk? Cyberpunk is a subgenre of science fiction in a dystopian futuristic setting that tends to focus on a combination of lowlife and high-tech, featuring futuristic technological and scientific achievements, such as artificial intelligence and cyberware, juxtaposed with societal collapse, dystopia, or decay. The term cyberpunk was first coined by Bruce Bethke in his 1983 short story titled Cyberpunk. In Bruce's own words, he was actively trying to invent a new term that grokked the juxtaposition of punk attitudes and high technology. And while Bruce coined the cyberpunk term, it was William Gibson, known as the cyberpunk pioneer, who created the cyberpunk genre with his famous 1984 science fiction novel, Neuromancer, which is considered the archetypal cyberpunk work. Sure, there were other novels, such as Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, published in 1968, that are considered cyberpunk, but it was Neuromancer that really put the genre on the radar. The 80s and 90s was a defining era for cyberpunk. Neuromancer, Snow Crash, Software, Judge Dredd, Blade Runner, a ton of sci-fi and cyberpunk media that shaped the genre to what it is today. Our humble beginnings in Night City started before Cyberpunk 2077, something I didn't know until my recent research. But yeah, we get our first introduction of Night City through a tabletop RPG called, Cyberpunk, or Cyberpunk 2013. These names are just a little bit on the nose. The 1988 tabletop RPG written by Mike Pondsmith. If you're wondering what a tabletop RPG is, then think of Dungeons and Dragons. Another name used for the genre is pen and paper RPG. If you're a big fan of Cyberpunk 2077 and Night City but have never heard of the tabletop RPG, then I'd heavily recommend checking out the sourcebook. It's the first introduction we have to Night City and gives a history of the world, discussing the development of Chew 2 by Biotechnica, the corporate wars, the development of the first interface chip, and it also includes iconic characters such as Alt Cunningham, Rogue, and of course, Johnny Silverhand. This is also where the Never Fade Away story originated. I had no idea these characters and stories existed so long ago. The sourcebook even has a sample layout of Night City. When I found all of this out, I was taken aback. Like, all this stuff is like, what, 30 years old? Arasaka, Militech, Trauma Team, the Nomads, it's all in the sourcebook. In this world, bodies line the gutter. Wild-eyed lunatics stagger through pre-dawn streets, muttering darkly and clutching sharp knives. Players should find their apartments regularly broken into. Crossing town should be like crossing a battlefield, filled with looters, riots, crazies, and muggers. It always rains. The stars never come out. The sun never shines. The last bird died in 2008. And the kids are grown in vats. The ozone layer decayed, greenhouse effect took over. The sky is full of hydrocarbons, and the ocean full of sludge. Nice place, really loving it here. This was just from the first edition, Cyberpunk 2013. A second edition was also released in 1990, Cyberpunk 2020, and this delved even deeper into the lore of Night City. As a cyberpunk, you grab technology by the throat and hang on. You've got interface plugs in your wrists, weapons in your arms, lasers in your eyes, biochip programs in your brain. You become the car you drive, the gun you shoot. With cyborged fingers, you pick computer locks. With enhanced senses, you see into the future. And there's like 254 pages in this book too, like huh? We got the iconic stats such as intelligence, reflex, strength, tech, and cool. We're introduced to the life paths of Corpo, Street Kid, and Nomad. There's so much more revolving around corporate domination, drug use, weaponry, cybernetic implants, and technology. Morgan Blackhand, Spider Murphy, Phil Hernandez. Names that might ring a bell to you, or possibly more familiar to you than they are to me, but yeah, they all came from Cyberpunk 2020. And there's also Cyberpunk Red, which is the latest edition released in 2020, but this came out with Cyberpunk 2077. So it's more linked to the game and thus doesn't really fit the same category of vintage like the previous editions that came out so long ago. Now, it still has a ton of information, so if you're a big fan of the Cyberpunk world, I strongly recommend checking those books out.
Howdy, howdy, Night City. Welcome back. My guest tonight is Lieutenant Sarah Kokoski, spokeswoman for the NCPD. Hi there. Welcome to the show.
I first heard of Cyberpunk after its initial announcement by CD Projekt Red back in 2016. I became familiar with CD Projekt Red through The Witcher 3. I loved that game so much that I was going straight to CDPR's social media and channels to see what they've released or what future projects they were working on. Lo and behold, I found the Cyberpunk 2077 teaser trailer, released January 2013 on YouTube. We waited 8 years from the initial teaser to the release date. I was instantly interested in this IP the moment I laid eyes on it. And that's coming from someone that was never a fan of robots or cyborg stuff. I think it was the edgy blades coming out of the girl's forearms that really hooked me in. Yeah, the blades. Yeah, totally the blades. After this trailer, we didn't hear much about Cyberpunk until 2018, which is when all of the content and teasers began to pump out. I was already sold on the concept at this point, but the more trailers that released, the more excited I became. And of course, the iconic scene.
Wake the fuck up, samurai. We have a city to burn.
Like, dude, they had fucking Keanu Reeves. It was cool. Everyone was cheering. They had epic trailers. You're breathtaking. No, you're breathtaking. It was fucking cool as shit. No one knew what was to come on December 10th, 2020.
At CD Projekt Red, we dedicate ourselves to telling immersive stories. Yet with every new project, we set out to make our games bigger, more complex, deeply engaging.
I think if there was one video that did the most irreparable damage to Cyberpunk prior to the release, it would be the Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay reveal, the 48-minute walkthrough. What we saw in 2018 was quite different to what was released in 2020. In the first minute of the video, it does say,
"The gameplay you're about to see is from a work-in-progress version of the game. Everything you see is potentially subject to change."
And I won't go through the entire video here, but there are other videos and threads that go through all the quote issues. Yeah, let's just call them issues for now. I'll get into it later, but a few details about this trailer that you'll see.
Cyberpunk is a mature, visceral experience, and as such, it will let you explore a variety of different interactions with the game world.
Peruse and choose while I scan. See what's going on inside.
We're going to install both an optical scanner
Mark 1, like I said. Decent enough scanner. Displays data on your cornea.
and a subdermal weapon.
This pendejo. Hey, carnal! Hey, you got a problem?
This guy looks an awful lot like one of those scavengers we took out earlier.
This does not look good. Puta madre!
Grab the wheel, Jack!
Oh, fuck!
I think after this walkthrough and the various trailers to come, everyone was super hyped. Your decisions shape your story. Your actions have consequences. The life path you choose will unlock different possibilities. a unique experience, hanging in the streets and clubs of Night City as a lowly street kid, venturing through the deserts and badlands as a nomad outcast, or reaching your peak as a corpo, to ascend through the ranks or die trying. In your story, you'll encounter various gangs depending on what part of the city you're in. I was very excited for this. Seeing the different gang interactions, their impact on the story, creating allies of one gang such as the Voodoo Boys and creating enemies with the other gang, the Rivals. I was thinking maybe we could join a faction and build a reputation with specific gangs. Or maybe gangs treat you differently, depending on how you operate on their turf. Hobbies and pastimes were also mentioned. Could we play in a band? Go bowling? Clubbing? It seemed like this game had everything I wanted in an open world RPG. I thought Cyberpunk 2077 would revolutionize gaming and set the standard moving forward. More ambition than The Witcher 3, more advanced than Grand Theft Auto 5, more hyped than The Elder Scrolls 6. And then it released. December 10th, the release date. Now unfortunately I don't have my own gameplay from the launch day, but for many it was unplayable, especially on consoles. It was so bad that Sony even removed Cyberpunk from the PlayStation Store and issued refunds to any player looking for one. Luckily for me who played it on PC, I didn't have many game-breaking issues or bugs that prevented me from enjoying the game. Sure, there were some bugs that broke my immersion a little.
Let's go.
And the game crashed more times than I'd like to admit, but it was still stable enough for me to play through the game and enjoy the story. There are a ton of videos showing just how bad Cyberpunk 2077 was on release. CD Projekt Red went from the beloved studio that brought us the fantastic Witcher series to, according to many people, liars. You see, the bugs were only part of the problem. Remember that 48-minute trailer I mentioned? Well, a lot of the stuff in that trailer either didn't make it into the game or just wasn't accurate. The game felt a lot more linear than initially shown, and most of the actions and decisions you make have absolutely no impact on your story or the world around you. Let's take an example.
Who is they? Netwatch. They always out to fuck us.
The Voodoo Boys and the Netwatch plot. You must choose a side. I ask myself, how will this affect the story? What consequences will this have in the future? How will this change my relationship with the Voodoo Boys? Once you make that decision,
You set me up!
As you can see, we have many possible options.
nothing changes after the quest. I checked both outcomes, and yes, they have different endings, but generally lead to the same conclusion: contacting Alt Cunningham. And once you do that, nothing else really matters. There are no ramifications, no one treats you differently. It feels meaningless. It felt like the only mission that was on that level of expectation was the one shown in the 48-minute gameplay trailer. And after that, most of the missions feel much more linear besides one or two decisions you make in a quest here and there. There are some gigs that can be approached more than one way, but it's nothing substantial. The illusion of choice is ample in Cyberpunk, where most of the decisions you make mean very little and amount to nothing. Choices, dialogue options, a lot of it just doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. One area it's very important in is during your talks with Johnny Silverhand. If you hear him out and speak with him, it builds your relationship. But if you always shut him out and avoid him, then you just don't get along. The fact that it's so straightforward and easy to do, it makes it less interesting. A lot of the cool shit you see in the Cyberpunk trailers are all from cutscenes and scripted events in the story. So everything felt a little shallow and surface level in the game. For example, in the Cyberpunk trailer they talk about pastimes, and in the clip shown you're on stage performing in front of a live audience.
Sometimes it's about style, choosing your look, your ride, your pastimes.
I see this and think, whoa, you can organize jamming sessions and concerts with bands? That's sick. But then as you play through, you realize that this is just a cutscene that occurs once. Another is the car chasing and drive-by shootings. You see this occur in the trailers and you think, oh, this seems like a regular occurrence. But it's just cutscenes from the story. So there was none of that in the open world either. Like, I'm thinking initially they had all these big ideas that they wanted to implement, but just didn't have the time and the resources. There's a reason the game kept getting delayed. The initial release was on the 20th of April, then the 17th of September, then the 19th of November, and finally the 10th of December. That's a lot of delays. So my problem wasn't the bugs, it was the expectations that were never met. Like, okay, so This is a weird thing to complain about, but for a gamer city that's so sex obsessed, there's only like 2 fucking joy toys that you can hook up with in Jig Jig Street. Yeah, it's strange to complain about, I know that, but in the trailer, V is waking up to some dude leaving her apartment. But that stuff doesn't exist in the game. Like, not that I really wanted it to, but I'm just pointing it out. Like, okay, fuck it. You get what I mean. The trailer also showed Vic, our Ripperdoc, manually installing your cyberware. There is dialogue, animations. The overall experience of cyberware implementation seemed interesting, considering that this is a Cyberpunk game. This baited everyone into thinking that we'd have more cutscenes like this for other cyberware, for legs, body, arms, but no. That cutscene was also scripted. You see that scene once and never again. Was the game fun to play back then? Yeah, it was pretty good, but nothing really stood out to me. The strongest area for me was the characters, and even then I still think the character relationships and writing in The Witcher 3 is superior. And then, the life paths. Do not get me started on the life paths. The unique gameplay and story for each life path was so short and minuscule that it became a meme. All the life paths provide are 30 minutes of unique content in the beginning, a random pointless side quest that is forgettable, and some extra dialogue options that amount to nothing. Just RP dialogue really. No, what else was there? A big issue I had was the takedowns, or lack thereof. Remember that takedown shown in the gameplay trailer? You shove a scav's head into the tub and then shoot him under the water. Now, I don't know how accurate it is, but it's cool nonetheless. But anyways, in the game you only have 2 takedown options, lethal and non-lethal. That's it. I expected more variety depending on your surroundings or weapons like they showed in the trailer. But no, there's none of that. Just chokeholds and neck snaps. Even when you install the mantis blades, gorilla arms or monowire, surely they provide unique stealth takedowns, right? No, they do not. Just more neck snaps. I was disappointed in this when playing back at launch, and the wall climbing shown in the trailer, you can't do that. When you take down an enemy and access their neural port and hack nearby systems or enemies, nope, it doesn't exist. I mean, so far this has just been me talking trash on Cyberpunk, but this is discussing the state of the game in 2020, and back then it wasn't all bad. I had a lot of fun playing Cyberpunk. When I completed the story, I was sad to see it end. I was even thinking of playing through again at the time, but I wanted to wait until the game was more stable. At that point the problem wasn't what we had, it was what we expected. I enjoyed Cyberpunk 2077 for what it was, but it will always feel a little shallow due to the initial expectations. I know that Cyberpunk Orion will be next in line for the franchise, but I just hope that the developers are more open with us. I started my Cyberpunk journey on the release day of Cyberpunk 2077 and completed the game in approximately 3 weeks. So I missed out on a lot of the big patch updates and revisited the game after the release of patch 2.1, which according to CD Projekt Red is the last major update for the game. So all development has now stopped for Cyberpunk 2077 as of this video. So how did Cyberpunk 2077 change throughout the years? Well, many of the patches were just small bug fixes, so I won't bother bringing those up. I'd rather talk about the major updates and changes, but I will say, there were a lot of bug fixes. Going through them all would take a while. Let's go to patch 2.0. First of all, they did a complete overhaul of the cyberware system and perk trees, adding the cyberware capacity system to limit the amount of cyberware you can equip unless you get perks that specifically increase your threshold. A nice addition that adds to the immersion, and instead of clothing providing armor, which was a little weird, now most of the armor can be acquired through equipped cyberware, which makes a lot more sense. Vehicle combat was finally added too. Quick hacks and perks were added, such as the self-destruct quick hack, which causes the target vehicle to explode. You can use pistols and submachine guns while driving. There's a variety of perks optimal for vehicle combat, and now there are actual random encounter chases in Night City, from different gangs depending on your area, something that was hinted at in the early trailer. It's no longer a scripted feature in the story, this stuff can actually happen randomly now. The police system was completely revamped too, with police officers patrolling the streets, allowing them to respond to crime quickly and naturally. Thank fucking God. So instead of randomly spawning behind you, officers nearby will respond. They also added the heat system, which is basically the GTA star system. The more crime you commit, the higher stars you get, and at 5 stars, max tech squads will come for you, which is a nice addition. It's as if you're the cyber psycho in the situation. One of the biggest changes to occur was the perk tree overhaul. While the stats such as intelligence, cool, strength, reflex, tech remain, perks in each stat have completely changed, and that's for the best. Some of the old perks that were just stat increases have been altered to a leveling system, where your stats such as net running, solo, and shinobi will increase with specific actions. The more hacking you do, the more your net running will increase. The more dashing and jumping you do, the more your shinobi stat increases. It changed so much of Cyberpunk as we knew it. The next patch added even more features. Patch 2.1. They added a metro station. Finally, after one of the first trailers showing V in the metro, they finally added it to the game. Personally, I wasn't too pushed about this, but I mean, hey, I'd be lying if I didn't think it was a cool addition. A radio port was also added, meaning you could listen to the radio in your head without being in the vehicle. I like to use this when I was just roaming around, doing NCPD cleanups to get some cash. Another feature I wasn't personally looking for, but was happy to see it added. Boss fights were improved, especially for Adam Smasher. Now he'll adapt to your attacks in your build, giving you a tougher fight. Like when you use your Sandevistan for example, well guess what, old Adam here is a Sandevistan too. Another nice feature is that you can hang out with romantic partners at any one of your apartments, which is a nifty little feature. I always had an issue with the lack of involvement your romantic partner had after completing their missions, so this is a really nice touch. It's also a repeatable mission which gives it a more natural feel of, oh hey, you want to just hang out, instead of completing the mission once and being done with it. There is a ton of stuff I haven't mentioned, but honestly if I talk about all of the other changes they made, we'd be here all day. Even looking through the patch notes has me overwhelmed, especially for patch 2.0 and 2.1, because this was when the big overhaul changes were introduced and also when Phantom Liberty, the Cyberpunk DLC, was released. Now currently patch 2.1 was the final update to be released, and I thought it was about time for me to revisit Night City. I had my issues with Cyberpunk 2077 back in 2020, the bugs, the crashes, and the expectations that were never met. Yes, they were an issue, but I was still satisfied with my playthrough. And coming up to this, I did have a small urge to play Cyberpunk again, especially since Phantom Liberty already dropped and development was complete, so no time like the present.
Hello, I'm Arif Iqbal, and you're watching WNS News.
The last time I played, I tried out the male corpo path, and went on a power-hungry tirade to become the greatest legend in Night City. So this time I went the complete opposite, and picked a female nomad who preferred the peaceful life, but was forced to take chaotic risks to remove the chip from her head. And I also wanted to try the Judy romance, which was what I initially wanted with my male V, but Judy doesn't roll that way. Oh, and I played the highest difficulty too. So how did my story go? Well, I'm surprised by how long the nomad beginning is compared to the other life paths. The corpo intro was incredibly short from what I remember, but oh wait, it's because this car chase feels fucking impossible and very hard. I had to keep resetting before the car chase because I could never get it right. I even had to look up a guide on how to complete this segment, and it's only been 20 minutes into my story, oh fucking dear god. After all these years, I was still very disappointed at the little montage intro where you go from a corpo or a nomad to just another street kid in Night City. There was so much potential to do more missions here to really develop your relationship with Jackie, Vic, Misty, and T-Bug. This entire cutscene just feels slapped together and it's actually awkward. I'm guessing there was some additional content here that would ease you into the main story maybe, but I don't know, maybe they just didn't have time to complete it, so instead they cut the content out. I was super bummed out by this because the unique life paths and stories was what had me the most excited prior to release. It would be nice if we got more here, but no reason to dwell on it further. It is what it is. Besides the final quest of the main story in Phantom Liberty, I still believe that the pickup is one of the more complex missions in the game where you have a variety of ways to tackle the mission, which leads to different outcomes. Another quest that is comparable to it, in a way, is Automatic Love, the quest where you go to Clouds to search for Evelyn. It's not as complex, but still has many unique approaches, optional steps, and outcomes depending on how you reach Woodman. But the pickup is still the quest that feels the least linear, which is very, very unfortunate. For most missions, it feels as though your choices do not matter and do not affect the world around you. Another big, big disappointment. If you still don't understand what I'm trying to say, think of the quest Down on the Street. The quest where you and Takamura meet with Oda to reveal the truth behind Saburo's death. No matter what you say to Oda, nothing changes. There are no unique outcomes or consequences. Oda will always storm off without listening. It makes some of the missions feel pointless, because when you first play it feels like your choices matter, but then you check out other paths or videos and you realize they all lead to the same conclusions. You almost feel like an idiot for getting excited initially. Now, after the pickup quest, I got my first unscripted car chase scene, and I don't know if this was a complete coincidence or if it was triggered after betraying the Maelstrom, but if this triggered after completing the pickup, then that's a great addition to the game. This was what I was looking for initially, this and just a little bit more. Like, if you fuck with the Maelstrom too much in their territory, then they'll be more aggressive towards you. You may find yourself in more shootouts or car chases. You'll be detected when walking past gang members and a shootout will begin. That's what I was expecting when I heard your choices matter. It's a step in the right direction for me, I won't lie. Though in the beginning they really fucked me up on very hard difficulty. I was not ready for it. I died a few times, I got a little frustrated, I won't deny it, but still a great addition. Also, just throwing it out there randomly, can we just appreciate the Cyberpunk soundtrack? It's fucking phenomenal. Ambience, battle soundtracks, radio music, it's all so good. I forgot about the brain dances in this game, and in my opinion, the brain dances fucking suck. Like, the first time you play the game, they're cool to do, but once you go through 2 or 3 brain dances, it becomes incredibly frustrating to do. I like the concept of brain dances, especially the black market twisted side of the business, where people are literally kidnapped, tortured, and murdered for the brain dance thrill. Of course, that stuff would make money. It's incredibly realistic and accurate in a terrifying way. It's one of my favorite concepts in the Cyberpunk universe, but gameplay-wise, it's one of my least favorite segments to do. The gig I had the most fun with was a very basic one actually, but it wasn't the gig itself that made it enjoyable, it was what happened outside of the gig that made it so interesting. The Maelstrom gig, it was incredibly standard until the police somehow got involved in the gig, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but add the Maelstrom, the police, and being on the highest difficulty, and you have one of the spiciest gigs in the game in my opinion. V versus Maelstrom versus the NCPD. It was a lot better than your typical, hey V, my client wants you to kill this person, check the message for more information, or hello V, my client wants you to steal this product from the Tiger Claws, sending you the details. The addition of an outside party such as the NCPD made the gig a lot more unpredictable and fun. I wish a lot of the other gigs had a level of unpredictability to them because, I'm not going to lie, the gigs got stale quickly. But they are mini quests that are necessary for cash, components, and leveling, so I can understand why the majority of gigs fall into the basic category. One thing I never truly appreciated until returning to Cyberpunk was the characters' facial expressions and animations. Everything felt real and natural. The characters never looked lifeless, and not once did I get that creepy, uncanny valley feel that I would get in many other games. The level of detail that goes into each character's facial expressions, eye tracking, and animations in general is phenomenal, especially during the in-game cutscenes. It's spectacular. I was captivated by Jackie's expressions and reactions during the heist. The fantastic soundtrack and overall feel of the scene was almost breathtaking. I rarely feel that level of intensity for in-game cutscenes. There were many other examples of amazing facial animations and expressions, but this scene really stood out to me. It was a very immersive scene that was later ruined by the awkward AI interactions when trying to sneak out of Konpeki Plaza, an issue that is one, probably very difficult to address because if the AI was spotted and blew your cover, then it would ruin the experience and become incredibly frustrating. But then there's number 2. It still just looks bad and was never really addressed. You know, like you're trying to sneak around and hide behind cover and you see Jackie just crouch walking behind you, almost brushing against an enemy's leg or literally walking into their line of sight, only to be completely ignored. There was also one moment during the scene where Jackie just began shouting as if we were in combat.
Cover me, V!
When it comes to stealth, it's generally easier and less scuffed when you're alone.
All cleaned up. Los hijos de la chingada también están aquí! That's all of them.
Also, random point just thrown in there. Does anyone else find some of the dialogue and slang a little cringe? I don't want to use the word cringe, let's just say it's painful to listen to.
Ladies and gentlemen, a critic. Chill. Ain't half bad.
You want the flathead? I better see some eddies. Look, it wasn't us, alright? It's already cold, we swear.
Like, the first time we meet Johnny, I found that entire segment to be very awkward and the dialogue seemed a little off.
The fuck kind of droid toy are you supposed to be?
Fucking ghost off!
What does that even mean? And to add to that, I just can't get behind the cyberpunk slang. I felt like a part of me died whenever a character said Chumba, Preem, Deets, or Gonk. I go, hey, what's up, Chumba? Did you get the deets for the new gig? We gotta flatline some gonk down in Jig Jig Street. We keep it on a low and we'll be rolling in eddies. Sound preem? No, to be fair, not everyone feels this way, which is a really good thing. I took a look online to see how others felt, and a lot of people enjoyed the cyberpunk slang, and if that's the case, more power to you. Now, I just couldn't get behind it personally, but it does build on the cyberpunk universe, and most of the slang was part of the cyberpunk tabletop RPG, so I can't really hate on it. So it's not like an objectively bad thing, this is just me personally. The beginning of Act 2, when I met Johnny, was when I decided to really explore Night City. So now I want to discuss the features of Cyberpunk 2077. While I was playing, I must admit that yes, there were many improvements, but it wasn't the perfect gameplay experience. The combat in this game is really fun. Just one quick YouTube search and you'll see a list of epic Cyberpunk 2077 combat montages for strength, reflex, net running, and it's always entertaining thanks to the skill tree overhaul, but it's still quite unpolished in my eyes anyways, especially in the beginning. Most enemies are just bullet sponges, melee combat is a bit rough, and a lot of the animations can be out of sync or have no sound. Now you might say, oh of course they're bullet sponges, they have armor and cyberware and advanced tech and blah 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 blah, and you can create some headcanon to defend this, but when you watch the earlier gameplay and you see this, like, it just looks janky as fuck. I must admit that once you level up, get new perks and develop a strong playstyle, let's say you max out strength and use shotguns, max out cool and use snipers and pistols, or max out reflex and use a katana, then the combat gets much better. So the combat can just be really awkward in the early game. Like during the car chase scenes, you can unload a mag into someone and they seem unfazed. Yeah, maybe it's the cyberware that protects them. Well, yeah, okay. Tough shit, it still looks bad. As the game goes on, you get so OP that it hides the flaws of combat. The reason I enjoyed combat so much is because I was a big stealth guy, so I didn't encounter the jankiness that someone usually would when using a submachine gun or assault rifle. But the more stealth I did, the more problems I encountered. One of my biggest issues when stealthing is if you hit someone with, let's say, a throwing knife or a silenced weapon. Well, if they don't die from the initial shot, you get detected immediately. Doesn't matter if you're hidden or no one can see you, if your target doesn't die, everyone immediately figures out your location without having to search or track you. This was one of the most frustrating things for me to deal with. I couldn't shoot certain enemies because it would immediately give away my position. It was just annoying. Now, don't get me wrong, just because the combat is a little janky doesn't mean it isn't fun. I had a fucking blast with the Militex and Devastan. Oh, that shit was fucking crazy, dude. Slicing through enemies with the Mantis Blades, lobbing throwing knives at enemies before they can comprehend what's happening, popping heads with Johnny Silverhand's Malorian pistol, that stuff was nice. The combat is good, it's really good, don't get me wrong. It's just that many problems came from how the enemy AI acts during combat. But if you kill them quick enough, you don't have this problem. It's like why I said the stronger you get, the less obvious it is. One of the biggest disappointments for me was, and still is, the lack of stealth animations. All you can do is snap the enemy's neck or choke them out, even after all these years. There's still no animations mimicking the stealth kill we witnessed in the 48-minute gameplay trailer. And speaking of animations, the killing animations in Cyberpunk are cool but very buggy. If the enemy is caught in an animation, let's say I throw a knife at them and they're staggered, for me to get the killing animation, I have to wait a few seconds for the stagger animation to finish before activating the finisher animation. Otherwise my character does an awkward dash to the enemy and just stabs them, then a few sparks fly and they collapse. Yes, it makes for a quick kill, but brother, I purchased the skill animation, surely I'll be able to consistently do it, right? Why should I have to stand there and wait for them to regain composure while I'm getting blasted by everyone around me? The more actions you let the enemy do during combat, the more scuffed the gameplay becomes. If you go around slicing and tearing through everything in sight or pass through gigs without being caught, you'll have a good time with the combat. If the combat takes a little longer, then things can feel a little unpolished or awkward at times. But when it's good, it's really fucking good. Driving is okay in Cyberpunk. For an open world game, I would say it's stiff but passable. I will admit that I didn't try out all the cars in the game, but I usually went with motorbikes anyway. But Cyberpunk can't compete with games such as Forza or Grand Theft Auto 4 when it comes to driving. The difference is night and day, but it's not terrible. Driving wasn't the focus of the game, and for an open world RPG it's decent. If I could bring up one issue, it's that the driving physics in the game is bad. You crash into walls or poles and there's just no reaction. There's no, let's call it ragdoll physics. Everything feels incredibly stiff when driving. So as much as I enjoyed the gameplay, these issues always lingered in the back of my mind. The game isn't perfect and still has issues post-development, but for an open world first-person RPG, it's still exceptional. There is so much attention to detail, Night City is much livelier, and tons of updates were added to give an immersive and realistic experience. Also, the game is just absolutely beautiful with the right PC and ray tracing, which I unfortunately couldn't use, but with the right hardware and specs, this is one of the most gorgeous games on the market. Even some linear, story-driven games struggle to compete with the beautiful design of Cyberpunk and Night City. The graphics are beautiful, the gameplay is fun, and the story is fantastic. Before starting my journey, I wasn't sure how much I would explore. I was thinking to myself, I'll just do some side quests, try out another romance option for a different experience, hit up a few gigs, and finish the main quest. But the more I did in Night City, the more I wanted to do. In my first playthrough, I enjoyed the game but never delved into the crafting system or the cyberware upgrades. I just upgraded one or two items and called it a day. But now I was upgrading my iconics, gathering weapons and components like some tech junkie looking to disassemble everything for parts, going in and out of the Ripper Dock every hour to get new upgrades, doing tons of gigs and quests to max out stats, trying out different methods of gameplay, hacking, melee, stealth, the Sandefistan, double jumping, air dashing, purchasing vehicles, purchasing apartments, spending time with my virtual girlfriend. Yeah, I got a little too invested at times. When it comes to the Cyberpunk story, it has its ups and downs. Firstly, most of your choices don't matter. I've already complained about this, so I won't talk about it here, but of course, that is a negative for me. There were some quests and stories that were amazing, and others that were not so amazing. Let's start with the not so amazing. Literally any quest that involves brain dances. I don't like them, I will never like them. I love River's whole side quest when you help him find his nephew. It's a really unnerving set of Noir-like quests and can be quite intense for some. But Jesus man, the brain dances just take me out of it each time. What the fuck? I just wish they somehow approached it differently. I'd roll my eyes every time I had to do one. Also, I just found River to be an incredibly uninteresting character, something I might get to in a bit, but yeah. Act 1 can feel like a bit of a chore to get through if you've already played Cyberpunk. Watson is on lockdown, so you can't explore the area. You're just tempted to race through the prologue to get to the actual open world segment. If I play this in the future, I'll be more inclined to skip the prologue, thanks to the Phantom Liberty update. Also, the Voodoo Boys was a bit of a pain to go through again. Like, don't get me wrong, if it's your first time doing these quests, you will enjoy them. They just become a little more of a chore once you've already played them and know what to expect, even when you haven't touched the game in years. I wasn't very interested in Kerry Eurodyne's side quests. I liked the main quest that involved gathering the old band members of Samurai for one more rock session, but after that, his quests with the Us Cracks beef was super uninteresting in my opinion, and I didn't find Kerry to be the most captivating of characters. But to be fair, at this point in the story, I was also a little burned out, and the reason is that I've done these missions before and was at that point where I was reaching the end of the game and was eager to reach Phantom Liberty. Kerry's side quests was one of the last on the list before I went to Dogtown for new content, so I was just looking forward to getting it out of the way, unfortunately. Now let's go to the more amazing quests, in my opinion. No matter how many times I had to repeat it, I absolutely adored every Johnny Silverhand quest, that being Love Like Fire, Never Fade Away, Chippin' In. Any mission that Johnny is heavily involved in is a mission I adored. My favourite quest in the main story, excluding the final missions, was the Play It Safe quest, where you neutralize the snipers during the parade and disconnect the Netrunner so Takamura can reach Hanako Arasaka to expose her brother, Yorinobu. The scenery and music music is beautiful. Like I said, I'm a sucker for stealth, so this was right up my alley, and of course, my favourite boss fight in the game by a mile. The boss fight with Oda. It was one of the very few fun boss fights in my opinion. Every time I died, I was aware of my errors. There were various ways to defeat him instead of just running and gunning. And he wasn't a complete bullet sponge either. Most boss fights in Cyberpunk dragged out a little too long for me, such as the Militech Chimera and Phantom Liberty. After a few minutes of endless shooting, I was just waiting for it to be over. But with Oda, the running and gunning, the Mantis Blade dueling, the hide and seek mechanics made this boss fights one of the best in the game. Also, the mentor and student dynamic between Oda and Takamura enriched the story and the battle. Some quests were a lot of hassle to repeat in this run, but when it comes to Panam and Judy's quests, it was still very enjoyable in terms of lore or RP. It was quite fitting for my Nomad V to find a home with the Aldecaldos and develop a connection with them. The whole family vibe, chilling by the campfire and casually stealing a Militech Ballista was, it was quite wholesome. The reason I enjoyed Judy's quests so much is because Judy is probably one of my favorite characters in the entire game. Maybe my number 2, like she's probably fighting for number 1 with Johnny Silverhand. Those two are like my tops.
You're starting to remind me of me, 50 years back, minus the charisma. An impressive car.
Like, a lot of players disliked Pyramid Song because if you're not entirely invested in Judy's story, then there isn't a whole lot going on. You're just swimming around waiting for the quest to end. But I really enjoyed it, even when I repeated the quest. And I felt a little sadness after completing Judy's story. Although she was still in Night City, it felt as though I was saying goodbye to her. Dude, what the fuck is wrong with me? And my favorite quest in the entire game, Dream On.
We know who you are. We know what you are. We know what you want. You are playing with fire. Don't dare cross the line.
Jefferson explains that he witnessed an intruder in his apartment several nights ago. He recalls shooting the intruder, but losing consciousness shortly after. Their private security, SSI, denies that any incident occurred. After investing the Perales apartment and noticing some strange behavior from Elizabeth Perales, you soon realize that there's a shadowy organization responsible for this mess, and that SSI are aware and complicit in the ongoing events. The quest is full of mysteries and sudden shifts in direction, and the ending of the quest is terrifying. It gives you a feeling of helplessness, despair. I'm not revealing the conclusion of this quest because I enjoyed the mystery of it, but if you've played it, you know how it ends. What I love about this quest is that there is no right answer or there is no good ending. You're given a choice. Tell Perales the truth of the situation or be dishonest. And within the context of the quest, like I said, there is no right answer. There were many more great quests and some not so great quests, but these ones were the highlight for me personally. Now, let's talk about the romance in Cyberpunk 2077. And before I ramble about romances, most of the points in this video is all my opinion, okay? It's all me, just wanted to put that out there. Just in case you've been upset with anything I said, this is all my opinion. You're free to have your own. None of this is objective, okay? Anyways, this may be due to me being a dude, or the Cyberpunk 2077 audience being dominated by men, but in my opinion, I think the Kerry and River romances completely pale in comparison to Judy and Panam's romances. It just feels like Judy and Panam have much more involvement in the main story, and their characters are just better in general. Fun fact, when you complete the side quests for a given character, you get an achievement, and when you check Steam, you can see how many players obtained these achievements. According to Steam, a whopping 41% of players completed Panam's storyline, 31% of players completed Judy's storyline, 27% of players completed River's storyline, and only 16% of players completed Kerry's storyline. Again, I'm assuming most of the Cyberpunk 2077 audience is male, and Kerry's storyline occurs later in the game, so it's probably easier to miss. But you can see that less people were involved in the River and especially Kerry romance options. I can't really look at this through an objective lens, but I found Kerry's quests to be the most uninteresting of the bunch, and I really wasn't a fan of River as a character. He kept making moves and I constantly had to shut him down, like bro, read the fucking room.
Am my brother likes you.
Josh?
Judy and Panam had much more personality in my eyes and had much more relevance in the story. While I preferred Judy and Panam as romance options, I still thought that the romance in this game was a little lackluster compared to The Witcher 3, for example. In The Witcher 3, I felt as though romance had more importance for character relationships. Alright, so Witcher 3 spoilers coming up. The game has been out for almost a decade now, so yeah, spoilers. Like, if you romance both Triss and Yennefer in The Witcher 3, I totally didn't do this, by the way, just saying. If you decide to admit your love to both Triss and Yen, they both figure it out and they dump you. So you're left with no one. This didn't happen to me, I swear. But in Cyberpunk, you can sleep around with whoever the hell you want and face absolutely zero consequences. I remember romancing Judy and River as female V, and after my night with River, I got a wholesome text from Judy that made me feel so bad that I had to reload the game and be loyal. Realistically, if Panam found out that you slept with Joy Toys and banged Kerry in the yacht, like, dude, she would fucking dump you immediately. So the fact that she's chill with it either goes against her character writing completely, or means that V never told her, and that's fucking messed up.
Know that we'll see each other again.
What? You know, fine.
No, not like that.
Now, the addition of the I really want to stay at your house quest is a welcome one. It does make those romance options that more important, which is always a plus. And it's not a one and done either. I think I mentioned this already actually. You can keep doing it over and over. I just wish you could do more outside of your apartment. Go to the club, explore Night City together, go bowling, things like that. I don't expect anything super crazy or cinematic, just something on the same level as this new quest, just with more activities to do. It would bring more life to Night City and its characters. Once I completed most side quests and storylines, such as Kerry's, Claire's, River's, Judy's, Panam's, the world of Cyberpunk began to feel a little empty. And I can't lie, it actually made me sad. Now, of course, this would happen. I'm not complaining about the emptiness of the world. This isn't a negative, it's quite the opposite. It means I enjoyed doing missions with most of these characters. I enjoyed receiving calls and chatting to them. You're doing a mission for River. Oh, what's that? Oh, Judy is calling to discuss her plan to take Clouds from the Tiger Claws. Oh, Panam is messaging me to complain about Saul again. Oh shit, one of Delamain's crazy, fucked up vehicles is somewhere nearby causing mayhem.
A bitter, unlikable loner, whose passing shall not be mourned.
Everything felt so alive and active. But as you complete their quests and finish their stories, one by one, they stop calling. Sure, you receive the odd text or two from them every once in a while, but there was a hollow feeling left when I had to leave these characters, knowing I'll never really see anything else from them. Like I previously mentioned in Pyramid Song, Judy's final quest. Once you complete it, she just sits at the pier, looking at the wonderful view, and you must depart and you don't really see her again. It's as if you're saying goodbye to the character. Her story is finished, but I didn't want it to end. I wanted her story to continue, and I think that means CD Projekt Red succeeded in creating compelling characters and stories that are just engaging. You keep wanting more, and this feeling occurs with many characters. When you complete Panam's quest, saying farewell to Johnny, depending on what path you chose. And speaking of Johnny, I must say that Keanu Reeves knocked it out of the park. His voice acting felt a little odd in the beginning, but it grew on me and has a charm to it that no other character has. He did a fantastic job as Johnny Silverhand, and I was glad to see him returning in Phantom Liberty. But I'll get to all that soon. It's just, the more I saw from Johnny, the more I liked him. It upsets me to know that we probably won't be seeing him return in Cyberpunk Orion. One of the big downsides when it comes to the side characters and their storylines is that each story generally follows the same formula. You somehow meet up with them in the main story through a mutual contact. You meet Judy while working with Evelyn. Rogue links you with Panam. Jefferson Peralez links you with River, yada yada yada. You get the point. You carry out the main quest, then a few days later they contact you. You complete 4 or 5 missions for this person, and depending on V's gender, you may have a chance to romance them. You hook up and you have the choice to be in a relationship or not. Then for the majority of the story, you just rarely see them again. It's as if they just cease to exist, except for the text message they send you every few days. I wish we had options to have these characters interact with each other more, such as Judy and Panam, or Rogue and Takamura. It would have added a lot more depth and realism to the characters instead of them only ever contacting you. It can make the world feel a little hollow. Okay, I'm gonna compare it to The Witcher again, okay? It's because it's a CD Projekt Red project, okay? That's why I'm using The Witcher so much. But in The Witcher, We have all of Geralt's friends and allies gathering in Kaer Morhen to protect Ciri and defeat the Wild Hunt, the big bad villains of The Witcher 3. Interactions between Yennefer and Triss, Ciri and Vesemir, Keira and Lambert. It all felt so alive. Characters that aren't just interacting with Geralt, the protagonist of the series, but also interacting with each other. But in Cyberpunk, you just have relationships with individual characters that are never linked through you. How cool would it have been if we could contact Judy, a BD tech expert, to assist River and I in finding his nephew? Small things that would enrich the story so much more in my eyes. When you romance Judy and complete the star ending, which is when you run off with the Aldecaldos, spoiler, Judy accompanies you and leaves Night City. But I found it very odd to see how Judy and Panam were complete strangers to one another. I was caught off guard by this. I was thinking to myself, wait, you two don't know each other at all. I wish there was more development among characters that excluded V. It would have felt a lot more natural and authentic. Of course, there's relationships like, I don't know, Jackie and T-Bug, and there's relationships like Saul and Panam, or Evelyn and Judy. Yeah, we have those relationships, but they all kind of like knew each other before contacting you. I wish we could see new relationships develop and flourish during the story through you. Anyways, now that I bring up the star ending, I will say that I did complete Phantom Liberty before completing the main story. Once I completed the character storylines, did most side missions, upgraded my weapons and cyberware, I thought it was about time to visit Dogtown for Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty. I wanted my story to be a little more complete before closing out the main quest, and it was recommended that I do Phantom Liberty before speaking to Hanako at Embers, because A, Johnny is still present in Phantom Liberty, so it canonically happens before the ending, and B, there's a potential new ending to the story if you follow a certain path in Phantom Liberty. Now, at the time of playing, I was aware of the new ending path, but I didn't know how to get to it, so I was still going into this blind. All I knew is that my playthrough could open up a new ending.
Attention all Dogtown residents, this is Kurt Hansen. We've got some important guests in Dogtown. Hereby my personal invitation. Stay out of their way.
Phantom Liberty is set in Dogtown, an area that is still in Night City, but the moment you set foot in Dogtown, the environment completely changes. Everything changes, in fact. The moment Songbird could see and identify Johnny had me jolting up in my chair, because I'll be honest, at this point I was getting a little burned out. But when I saw this cutscene, when I saw this shit, like, it got me fucking going, dude. It was really good. Like, it doesn't start off too crazy. Like, it's a pretty slow start where you just have to, you know, rescue the fucking president of the new United States from a plane crash. Like, it's no big deal, you know. So it's a modest start. Immediately, I noticed that it felt much more cinematic than most of the main Cyberpunk story. Completely new areas. The lighting massively improved. The quest designs were such a step up. We were already exploring areas that felt foreign to the base game. It felt like a sequel, in fact. Everything in the base game felt samey, or maybe that's because I was just so familiar with the layout of Night City at this point. But the new designs in Phantom Liberty were a breath of fresh air. Everything just felt improved. The dialogue, the designs, the quest, it all just felt better. I went from burnout to excitement when I stepped into Dogtown. It was also a new experience for me. I already played the Cyberpunk based game before, but this was all new. Saying I was excited would be an understatement. Now, there was only one problem, for me anyways. My frames were dropping like fucking crazy. Whenever I stepped into a populated area in Dogtown, my PC would tweak the fuck out and drop crazy frames. But this was only a personal issue, and even then, it didn't negatively impact the story for me much. It was just odd that most of Night City was fine for me frame rate wise. Frame rate wise. But yeah, Dogtown was a bit of a mess when it came to that. I liked the new area a lot, but I wouldn't put it on the level of Toussaint in The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine DLC. Alright, I gotta stop comparing these two so much. The scenery and natural flow of the first mission already blew most of the Cyberpunk based game out of the water, and this is a good thing. We want these missions to be an improvement. We want them to be superior in terms of quality, and for me they were. The cutscenes, the tension, the music. The music was fucking good. The AI was still a little scuffed in some areas, I won't lie.
That was close.
I said it before and I will say it again though. I was happy to see Keanu Reeves return as Johnny. When Songbird mutes Johnny in the beginning of the quest, I was a little concerned that he was just gone for the entire DLC, but I was very, very happy to see him back. In Phantom Liberty, there is a multitude of new side quests, gigs, and mini quests, such as finding airdrops or relocating vehicles, that'll keep you busy for quite some time. Add the main quest to this and you have up to 30 hours of new content, I'd guess. You could see this as a brand new video game, to be honest. There's a lot of additional content and it's certainly worth the price in my eyes. Also, for a lot of the quests, you work with Mr. Hands, the fixer generally involved in the Pacifica and Dogtown operations, and his involvement in the story was very fascinating. It made me wonder how different this game would be if all Night City fixers had this much involvement in the story as Mr. Hands did. His heavy involvement in Phantom Liberty gives him a lot more depth compared to most other fixers in the game. The only fixers that can compare in my opinion is Wakako Okada for obvious reasons, and maybe Regina Joyce due to the list of cyber psychosis quests. Also, I don't know the names of any other fixers off the top of my head, so yeah, maybe they should have had more involvement in the story because they were kinda forgettable in my eyes. There's also a new skill tree that revolves around your relic. It's a relatively simple skill tree that doesn't involve a whole lot, but you find these relic points while exploring Dogtown, and accessing them gives you relic points to get upgrades, such as targeting vulnerable points on enemies to do more damage, improving your optical camo invisibility to escape combat, buffing your arm implants such as the mantis blades and gorilla arms. I unlocked these along with even more perks and the game just got more and more enjoyable. I had the most fun when I unlocked the Edge Runner perk in the tech skill tree. I was absolutely decked out in cyberware, most of it fully upgraded. I'd say my brain was absolutely fucking fried, man. Militech Sandevistan, toxic mantis blades, stacked armor, insane mobility. My view was going batshit insane while slicing up hordes of enemies. It was really fun. So even the gameplay massively improved in Phantom Liberty. Somehow, they did a great job. The Phantom Liberty story was fantastic and an improvement over the main story in the base game. I found all of the Phantom Liberty characters to be very compelling, a lot more compelling than those we meet in Night City. Not all, but most. You develop a connection to these characters in such a short time, something that CD Projekt Red is always excellent at accomplishing. I didn't know who to side with, who to trust. Characters were much more engaging, and one of my problems with characters not really interacting with each other in the main story, well, we see that a lot more here, which is a big plus for me. Everything just felt much more alive. Every mission felt incredibly unique from the other, so things never got stale either. Songbird, Reed, Alex, all incredibly dynamic and well-written characters. Not Myers though. Fuck Myers. V gets dragged into this mess because Songbird says she has a cure to save V's life, but we later discover that Songbird is also dying, a secret that she kept from everyone. And this proves that Songbird may have her own agenda or she can't be fully trusted. Suddenly, Songbird is taken away by Hansen, the dictator of Dogtown.
Taxes? Who the fuck needs them?
Reed is hired to fight Songbird. Shit hits the fan. Alex just wants to retire but gets dragged into this shit again. Myers is a bitch. V got dragged into this mess because she wants a cure. It's a wild fucking trip, I can't lie. I also feel a little bad for Johnny because he gets absolutely screwed over throughout the entire Phantom Liberty story. Each character has their own secrets and agendas, so you never truly know who your ally is. Reed's entire cover-up and hiding for 7 years, the history of Songbird's final assignment to kill Reed, them not entirely trusting Myers, Songbird hiding all the details of the cure from us. I didn't know who to trust, except Alex. She was chill. She just kinda likes to vibe. Each mission felt unique and didn't follow the same formula. Like you were playing a completely different genre of gameplay each time. Everything felt fresh in the short time I played the DLC. I didn't 100% complete Phantom Liberty or Cyberpunk for that matter, but I probably did put a little over 20 hours into the DLC alone. I didn't want to force myself to complete everything because forcing myself to do so can negatively impact my gaming experience, and I don't want that. Just playing what I want to play stops it from becoming a chore and ruining the experience. When it came to picking a side between Reed and Songbird, it was a tough one. I really enjoyed both characters, but I think my V personally related to the freedom that Songbird desired. So it felt right to side with her and betray Reed and Alex. She was dishonest in the past, she was hiding information from V, but once she revealed how she no longer wanted to be exploited and used as a tool, it made sense why she acted the way she did. It appears V was the only character that could truly understand what Songbird was going through. It was almost frustrating to hear Reed believe that Myers and the FIA could help Songbird. Sure, she could be saved, but she would be trapped with the FIA as a soulless tool forever. But deep down, I did feel as though I was being used by Songbird, but any other option felt wrong. Reed was a man who lived and died by his principles, a man who followed orders no matter what, even if it hurts the friends around him, something my V couldn't relate to. And standing against Myers and the FIA felt like the rebel thing to do, and that's what my V was, a rebel. A nomad. She often went against the grain, had a lot in common with Johnny. It only felt right for me to side with Songbird and go against the system, so to speak. A lot of people were going to die, but shit man, welcome to Night City. So when I sided with Songbird, I was disappointed by how easily Hansen was defeated. I was expecting more from him in the story, but was left underwhelmed and unsatisfied. Now, I later found out that if you side with Reed in the Firestarter quest, then there is a boss fight with Hansen later. I just wish we somehow got this in both paths, but then again, I do appreciate how much the paths diverge from each other. This is what I expected to happen much more in the story, but I am happy to see it here. They even had a whole unique horror mission where V has to run away from this creepy rogue AI, which is fucking terrifying by the way when I saw it. They actually did a great job with this. So I am happy that this mission splits into two different conclusions with unique stories. I really want to see more of this in Cyberpunk Orion. If it takes more time to do, take all the time you need. You have the potential for something spectacular with that. But anyways, based on my decision, my final quest was Killing Moon. And while there was no big bad boss here, the storytelling, the cinematography, the combat all made for a phenomenal finale. Fighting off mobs of FIA agents, escaping from Reed and President Myers, accessing the Black Wall and temporarily becoming a cyberpunk god. It was a quest fit for a finale, and I can't lie, this made me super depressed. CD Projekt Red really knows how to latch onto my emotions. When you finally reach the end and Songbird admits that there is only one cure, I was just stunlocked, bro. I didn't know what to do. I was sitting there for quite some time just processing the entire situation. I wasn't surprised that she betrayed me, but I just thought to myself, damn bro, this tough. I went through the mission anyway and sent Songbird to the moon. Even after the betrayal, I could understand why she did it. Desperation. Even after being backstabbed, it felt right to send her off. Also, immediately giving her up to Reed at that point just didn't sit right with me. I tried both endings, and whilst sending Songbird to the moon felt bittersweet, giving her up to Reed just made me feel like a shitty person. I mean, even Johnny called me out on that shit.
Thought about how you're gonna spend your 30 pieces of silver?
At least Johnny was there to keep me company after Songbird was gone. I'm still dying, but at least I got him. I soon realized that there was no good or correct ending, and once I completed my path, I was quite content with the outcome. Sure, I got screwed over, but I got screwed over by someone who was desperate to survive, cornered with no other options. Either be a mindless pawn, face death, or find the cure by any means necessary. If anyone could relate to this, it would be V, specifically my Nomad V. They yearned for the same thing, to be free. Songbird and V were so similar in that regard. It was almost like I was looking at my Netrunner equivalent. I think the reason it was so difficult to turn Songbird in is because I didn't find out about the betrayal. She told me herself. It was almost like she gave me the option to take the cure for myself when we reached the end. Any option other than helping her felt wrong. So I sent her to the moon after this. Now, if she never told me and wanted to hide this detail from me, you fucking bet I would have taken that cure for myself, because fuck that bitch. But there was something about her being honest in those final moments that stuck with me. She wasn't safe. Her fate was in my hands. So why did she tell me? That's what stopped me from betraying her. So I set her free. I gave her the cure and got nothing in return. Now it was time for V to find another conclusion.
Good evening, Night City. We begin with, following another attack on Arasaka's Night City HQ. The, Japanese Goliath has plummeted by 17%.
Hey. Panam, you really gotta
gotta fucking help me, I'm so fucked, I need some help. There isn't much to say about the endings of Cyberpunk 2077. You've probably seen them all before. Of course, there is the new Towers ending, and yeah, it's depressing as fuck. I couldn't handle that ending personally. So as a nomad, I found it fitting to go through with the Star ending, where Panam and the Aldecaldos assisted me in infiltrating Mikoshi. Like every ending, it has its ups and downs. There is no best ending in Night City, but this one seemed the most appropriate for my V character. She finally found a home, and her family were willing to die for her. In the beginning of my story, I started off alone, cut off from my clan, and now I had a place to call home. Everything was going so smoothly. I was preparing to say goodbye. Then, my immersion was fucking ruined by none other than Adam Smasher. Fuck this guy, by the way. During my fight with Adam, he decided it would be a great idea to bug out a fuck ton. Of all the times to happen, the worst bug emerged at the grand finale. Ready to close the chapter, captivated by the Phantom Liberty story, I was at an all-time high in terms of immersion. And Adam decided to charge me through a wall where I was trapped for like 5 minutes. I couldn't get out. I was stuck. And then, guess who decided to join me? Adam fucking Smasher. Dude, I got fucking demolished. So not only was I pushed through the wall, he also somehow followed me in. Like how? Fuck this guy. And then, oh, it gets better. It gets fucking better. After throwing hundreds of throwing knives at him and finally getting him to 50% HP, he suddenly became invulnerable. He said, fuck your knives, fuck your pistol, I'm not dying. Felt like episode 10 of Edge Runners, I was fucked. Speaking of Edge Runners, it's a fantastic anime that I would recommend for both Cyberpunk and non-Cyberpunk fans. It's set in Night City, has a ton of references to the game, and the story is pretty straightforward, but still very enjoyable. And the ending is, it'll tear at your heartstrings, I won't lie. Adam Smasher is in it, and they really made him a lot more terrifying and cooler in my eyes. The anime really did him justice. But the boss fight? That boss fight was absolutely ruined by bugs. Oda's fight is still the best in the game, in my opinion. Just wanted to put that out there. But after defeating Adam Smasher, finally, I reached Alt and had to say goodbye to Johnny. Again, CD Projekt Red nailed it with the music, perfectly setting the tone in each scene. I was happy to see Johnny again, but knew that it was our final chat. A phenomenal character and probably my favourite in the entire game. Keanu did a fantastic job voicing Johnny. Every time he appeared on screen with his classic one-liners, I couldn't help but grin. And because of that, it was a tough goodbye. But now it was time for V to live her life. Okay, maybe I have 6 months left to live, but we don't know that for sure, so let's move on from that. Mitch and Panam promised a cure. It'll be okay. I swear this is the happy ending. It was the best conclusion, leaving with the Aldecaldos. Judy tagging along because she also wanted to escape Night City. It just felt right. And as the credits rolled and I was watching the hologram messages from each character, I had that feeling of emptiness again. A feeling I only felt once before, and that was with The Witcher 3. Seeing those credits roll and the conclusion of each character's story, it was a feeling I was quite familiar with. It's also funny how both games were from CD Projekt Red too. They seem to really excel in character writing, or it just really hits me specifically. I don't know if others see it like that. Some of you might see this and think, bro, you sound like a fucking loser. But it's just how I feel. It was hard to say goodbye. While the credits were rolling, part of me wanted to boot up another game. I'm kind of interested in doing a full intelligence, cold-blooded netrunning build. But I'll probably save that for when I try it again in a couple of years. You know, when the game is considered a classic. Or right before the release of Cyberpunk Orion. I'll replay it then to freshen myself up. But thanks to Mike Pondsmith and CD Projekt Red, I've grown to appreciate the cyberpunk genre. It's one I knew nothing about before the release of the game, and I brushed it off after the initial completion. But this time I found myself even more obsessed. Probably because back then every time someone mentioned Cyberpunk, it was about the lies, and the bugs, and the corporate greed, and the hypocrisy, blah blah blah. And it was completely understandable that people brought up those topics. There were a lot of expectations that just weren't met. Some of the bugs were unavoidable. Save files were corrupt and lost forever. You couldn't enjoy the game for more than an hour without some game-breaking bug ruining the experience. What made it worse was the insane amount of hype that this game had, which went back years and was also riding off the success of The Witcher 3. At the time, CD Projekt Red became a laughingstock. But what about now? Well, are there bugs? Yes, I encountered some, and there are probably still many more. Is the game a little unpolished? In my opinion, yes. Some sections aren't the smoothest and can look a little goofy. Is the current Cyberpunk an improvement over its previous version? Absolutely. No discussion there. It's objectively a better experience. It's incomparable. Is it worth playing again? My answer to this is yes. It is one of the best gaming experiences I have ever had. The gameplay, the characters, the world. It completely sucked me in for the entire journey, and I didn't want it to end. I may have been very critical when I was talking about the downsides of the game, but that's because I cared about it so much. And I wanted to improve, and I wanted to get better. Because I'm being honest. I want to bring up the strengths of the game, but expose the weaknesses, so we can see improvements in the future sequel. It's clear that CD Projekt Red put a lot of work and care into this product post-release, and it shows through the current praise it gets. Not just from me, but from many people who returned to Night City after the clusterfuck that was 2020. I honestly didn't expect to enjoy Cyberpunk as much as I did this time around. But it had me feeling emotional. Very emotional for both Phantom Liberty, where I was only with the characters for a few hours, and the main story, which I already played. And I was still sad to see it end. And if a video game has me feeling such a way at its conclusion, then in my opinion that's a damn good game. Of course, everyone will be skeptical when it comes to the new Witcher series and Cyberpunk Origin, including myself. But I'm sure CD Projekt Red have learned their lesson from the last release and will not disappoint. For now, I look forward to seeing what they have in store for us. All they need is passion and time. If you made it this far, then I really appreciate you sticking around. I mean, I really appreciate it. This is the first time I did a video like this, so it's far from perfect. Hell, it might not even be considered good, I can't really tell. But whether it's good or bad, I did put a lot of time into this. I am proud of it. So if you're still here, please consider leaving a like and maybe a subscription. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope you enjoyed watching or listening. Thank you. Well, I guess they have more to add. Let's fucking go.